Hi, everybody. My name is Estelle, and today I'm going to be talking about the cuisine of the Basque country and how it is defined by the Basque identity, what that is, and how it's expressed through their food. So, what is Basque country? Basque country is an autonomous community that straddles the Pyrenees Mountains between the border between France and Spain. So, an autonomous community means that the Basque country has its own regional government that governs the public works and the utilities and the education system and the health system. And it actually has its own language and culture. And so there are 17 total autonomous communities in Spain. And it's been developed in the Spanish Constitution that these communities can exist, and a lot of them do. The Basque Country specifically has a population of about 2.2 million people, and the official languages spoken in it are Spanish and Euskara, which is the Basque language that I mentioned before, developed in that region. So the climate and landscape of the Basque Country consists of a lot of jagged mountain ranges. Part of it's in the Pyrenees Mountains. The Northeast has more of an Atlantic climate where they have regular heavy precipitation, and the southern portion of the Basque Country has a sub-Mediterranean climate with the warm, dry winters and more mild, wet, or sorry, warm, dry summers, mild, wet winters. Now, within that, there are about three different kinds of sort of settlements or where people live. So people will live within the mountain ranges, but these communities are more dispersed and they're centered around caseríos, which you can see in the top photo. It's like a small farmstead on a little plot of land where people will raise livestock and grow crops. And this population especially has really been declining as people immigrate out of Spain or emigrate to the bigger cities. And then in the more southern part of the region, there are these large basins where the communities are centered in one area, surrounded by fields and vineyards. And then there are coastal towns, which is where most of the population is centered. Now, all of these have an effect on the overall Basque cuisine and what's available to them. But who are the Basque? They're known in Europe as the Hasierak or the mystery people because their origin isn't really known. People believe that they could have come from early Neolithic farmers, but the Basque themselves call themselves Euskaldunak or speakers of Euskara, which is again the language. They have their own language, identity, and culture that they've maintained despite being so close to France and Spain, mostly because they're sort of geographically isolated by those mountain ranges. But the Basque were some of the first to explore the Americas with Christopher Columbus. They actually built some of the ships in his fleet in the Basque country. And so they were the first to bring back potatoes and corn, have become a really big part of their diet. So traditional Basque cuisine is defined a lot by those regions that I talked about earlier, both the weather in those and then the mountains versus plains versus coastal towns. And then influences from France and Spain, their neighbors, and from the Americas. And so a lot of the Basque cuisine features seafood. The salt cod dish in that top right corner actually comes from the Vizcaya region in Basque country, and it's popular in most Mediterranean diets. They also produce fresh fish and baby eels from the Cantabric Sea. And then in the mountains and the plains, they have that livestock and the beef and the veal. They also raise crops there. And then produce can also come from that outside influence, like from the Americas, is where they get their potatoes, their corn, their tomatoes, and peppers. And then wine is also pretty big in Basque country. It's produced in Alava, which is one of the regions within the country. And the two popular wines are Xacoli, which is a whiter fruity wine, and Rioja Alavesa, which is a more red wine. But most Basque dishes are pretty hearty due to that cold climate and mountainous terrain. Now, new Basque cuisine has been developed more recently, and it was influenced heavily by the Nouvelle Cuisine in France in the 1970s, which prioritized this sort of fresh, high quality, like seasonally available foods in their cooking. And so in the Basque country, this is centered on these ideas of seasonality and locality come through, particularly with the unique ingredients of the region, which include lagrima peas, which are those small peas in the top, cocochas, which is sort of the blubbery, like um, fatty part of a fish's neck, and then barnacles. But pinchos are the key to the Basque diet and dietary practices. They're kind of like tapas where you can go around and try a bunch of everything. Um, and one of their most famous dishes is the marmitaco, which is called from the pot. And it's a fresh tuna and potato stew that really involves all the like elements of the hearty Basque cuisine, like the tuna and the Xacoli wine. But then it also has those outside influences, like the potatoes and the tomatoes from the Americas and the peppers from Spain. So it's a true combination of all those influences. Now, Basque cuisine is actually incredibly popular throughout the world. There are 22 Michelin-starred restaurants in the Basque Country as of 2025, four of which have three Michelin stars, which is the highest ranking you can get. So this gastronomy and this cultural practice brings a lot of people to the Basque Country, and um, it really creates a permanent history of the Basque tradition and this traditional cuisine and culture. And so it's kind of etching them into history, which I think is really amazing. It's actually increased tourism substantially. So with that, that is your introduction to the Basque cuisine, and I hope you get to experience it someday. Thank you.